Here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, we've been talking about how the Steelers have been planning to bring back Blitzburgh this season, and they have. But now you're seeing the cohesion behind the Blitzburgh tactics, and I want to talk about that with Wes Uhler of Steelers Nation Radio. I'm your host, Chris Carter. It's the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. As before, we're joined by the man himself, Wes Uhler. He's back from Steelers Nation Radio. We love having Wes on. He's been on here for years. It's been a minute since we've had you on. Wes, it's good to see you, friend, but it seems like it's a changing of the times, but back to the old times for this defense.
Yeah.
As I've talked about for years under defensive coordinator Teryl Austin, the Steelers in his first 3 years were a top 10 defense, good to even very good. But they didn't send the blitz. They weren't one of the top sack producers. They weren't one of the top blitzers. And last year, to show that, they had a blitz rate of 25.9%. That was like just outside the top 10. They weren't not blitzing, but they were not blitzing as frequently. But through their first 5 games at 4-1, they have the number 2 blitz rate in the NFL at 35.5% right now in the NFL, only behind the Vikings, and they have the second most sacks in the NFL at 20 sacks, and they're only behind the Denver Broncos, who have 30 with an extra game played. What have you thought about how the Steelers have brought their blitz packages forward, and what have you seen that has excited you about this defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's about dang time, right?
Right.
Chris, there was a long stretch there kind of towards the back end of Ben Roethlisberger's career where the Steelers led the league in sacks every year. It was like 5 or 6 straight years. And the years that they didn't, they were at least 3rd or 6th overall in the top 10. Last year, they were 16th, kind of dead average right in the middle of the league. And that's weird as a Steeler fan, as a Steeler media person, analyst, wherever you're at on that spectrum, because it's almost like this organization's birthright to be getting after quarterbacks and to be getting sacks. We all know every era of Steelers football that's been successful, that's been a big benchmark of it. And of all the things we talked about in the offseason that this team needed to do better, that was one at the forefront of the conversation. They got to get back into the top 5, into the top 3, at the forefront of the league in sacks, because that's how they're built as a defense. That's what they're predicated upon. And it's been great to see that even after a slow start in that department, they're still second in the league and really coming on here these last couple of weeks. And Chris, this was, I think, a big part of why you went out and acquired guys like Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay. So you could play more man concepts on the back end that allowed you to get more exotic, to dial up some different things with your defensive front. So much of the time last year, it was just, it's going to be Cam, it's going to be Keanu, it's going to be Highsmith, it's going to be TJ, those 4. Yep. And those 4 were very good, and they did have some success doing that at times. And hey, they had 40 sacks last year, 16th in the league, certainly not terrible. But now you're seeing it from PQ. You're seeing it from Jalen Ramsey. I mean, adding guys like Derrick Harmon and Y.A. Black have certainly helped in this department as well, too. It's also made life easier on Keanu Benton now, who feels like you're not asking him to do the square peg and the round hole thing anymore like you were at times. It has been, I think, of all the things that we've seen progress through these first 5 games, 6 weeks for the Steelers, I think that is perhaps the most encouraging, is how they are once again back at the forefront of the league and getting after quarterbacks. Their sack differential is great, too, because the offense has done a good job of not giving up too many. Like I said, that to me, if you're going to list, and there's a few things now that I think you can list that have been very encouraging through these first 5 games, that one would be towards the top of the list.
I believe the Steelers rank 12th in sacks allowed right now in sacks per game allowed. And then on defense, they rank 2nd in sacks per game. So
yeah, that's where you want to be.
They're doing very, very well in those respects. I asked Teryl Austin about how the difference was, and you brought up Jalen Ramsey, and he did say personnel. I tried to clip this up, but we had some technical difficulties, so excuse me as I read his quote. He said, quote, "It's personnel. Who do you have doing what? I think we have good blitzing linebackers, obviously upgraded what we feel as our coverage people. So all it says is maybe you could do a little bit more of that. You don't want to just do something just because, hey, I'm supposed to be this type of guy, talking about his style of calling plays. You try to do what your players do to give them an opportunity to be successful. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing right by the players, not doing right by the team. My job is to try to do what we're good at and what our guys are good at to get the most out of them, not what I think is cool and good. That to me shows Teryl Austin being willing to form the defense around the strength that he sees on the team and to not try to make them conform to what he thinks this defense should be, regardless of his personnel. It's also a reminder to those who say that Teryl Austin is just a figurehead and does nothing on this team, that Mike Tomlin does the whole defense and he's the defensive coordinator. There's nothing that Teryl Austin does. Get out of here. That is not the case. It's never been the case. Mike Tomlin has a big role in the defense, just like he has a big role because he's a head coach. But Teryl Austin's still the coordinator, and I think you're seeing it with him calling up these blitzes. And Wes, I did a film study that should be out Wednesday morning for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But you look at these blitzes and what they're doing. It's not always that the free man's going to come off of like an overload blitz, but what it does, it forces tough decisions, because like there was Derrick Harmon, one of his half sacks where he teamed up with Alex Highsmith. When he rushes, there's two of the guard and the tackle are lined up on him, and they both get him initially, so he's getting double teamed. But then the guard looks at Cole Holcomb, who's just hovering by the line of scrimmage. Yep. He's just like, is he going to blitz? So he kind of goes to Cole Holcomb. The tackle looks at the edge and he thinks, oh, I need to help on the edge over here. And so he jumps that way. All of a sudden, Derrick Harmon comes free because there's so many guys, and it befuddles offensive lines. It befuddles quarterbacks. And there's several examples of that I'll show in my film study for you to check out at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But that's part of what's happening here. And I think it's really healthy and a good sign that Teryl Austin is using his guys, Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, Derrick Harmon, TJ Watt, all these guys. And he talked about the linebackers, Patrick Queen being one of them, all being part of this system to make things happen.
Chris, I think one of the fairest, is that a word? I think that's a word. I think one of the most fair criticisms of the Steelers coaching staff, we'll go with that, over the last couple years has been that at times they were too willing to go the Jimmys and Joes route instead of the X's and O's route, saying we've had some great players, we're going to trust them to line up and do their thing. And at times with TJ Watt, you had a ton of success doing that. At times with Ben and AB, you had a ton of success doing that. Our guy's just better than yours, and it's not going to matter. But I think when you can combine the Jimmys and Joes that they have now with the X's and O's, that's how you get to 4-1. That's how you get to a defense and an offense that are improving every single week. That's how you get some of those looks that you just mentioned. You know, on the offensive side of things, Chris, it's like, you know, you use that jumbo package in Dublin to run the ball successfully. And then you come out in that jumbo package, the first play of scrimmage against the Browns, and 36 yards to Darnell Washington. Now, every time the rest of the year, defensive coordinators have to prepare for that. And it's like they're doing the same thing on defense now as well, too, that every time you do this with Cole Holcomb or that with Patrick Queen or Jalen Ramsey lines up here, that's going to be something that quarterbacks are going to have to spend time diagnosing at the line of scrimmage. It's going to be something, an extra thing on the plate for offensive coordinators and quarterbacks and offensive lines to prepare for throughout the week. More confusion for running backs and pass protection, which is like a league-wide problem right now. Jaylen Warren seems to be like one of a handful of guys that has been solid in pass pro. It's a big issue for running backs across the league right now. You can put more on their plate in that regard too. I think, again, when you get back to some of the moves that they made this offseason, going out and getting more man-to-man guys in that secondary that allow you to play some chess with your defensive front and your linebackers, it didn't quite happen right out of the chute, but these last couple weeks especially, I think you have to love what you're seeing. And Chris, they can only expand upon it from here. You know, they just got Alex Highsmith back into the fold. We saw a little bit of Herbig, Watt, and Highsmith on the field together Sunday. I would expect that to continue. You know, they're just starting to get healthy in that secondary. Joey Porter Jr. missed some time. Deshaun Elliott missed some time. As those guys grow and iron out their communication and learn each other's games more, there's going to be more that you can do there. Cole Holcomb is fully back up to speed. You've got 3 linebackers that you really trust now. It's an exciting place to be here as, you know, we get ready. You know, the holidays are only like a month or so away here before it's going to be Christmas. That road is going to start to narrow before we know it. it's a really encouraging place for this defense to be, I think, fairly early in this process.
It certainly is. And again, they're still figuring it out. And part of what I was saying as far as them the cohesion's getting there is that now with these aggressive blitzes, which again, they did not do last year and really the past few years, now the coverage is aligning with them well. They're covering up the things that was happening in the first couple of weeks where they would send a blitz and like one guy would just have the wrong leverage and coverage and it exposes a wide open hole in their defense. Because when you're aggressive, that's the risk is you're taking a shot in one place and exposing another. But if the secondary does a good job in covering it up, they may not cover it up forever, but they'll cover it up for long enough so that the quarterback has to hold on to the ball or risk throwing it in a disadvantageous situation to the offense. And that is what I think is happening more and more often. And I'll show that in my film study at the Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Look up the Carter Critiques film study. But that's what's happening is I think you're seeing that coverage, the coverage aligned with the pass rush, working in cohesion a lot better, and it making the blitz that much more effective, bringing back Blitzburgh, of course, the term coined in the 90s when Dick LeBeau first arrived with his first iteration with the Steelers and was sending heat left and right and creating that identity that really has kind of became the identity of Pittsburgh from the 90s through the 2000s. So here we come to that. But one identity that seems to also align with Pittsburgh is they're always in the trade market for a wide receiver. Hence my Mr. Krabs meme.
And the next day, and the next day, and the next day,
and the next day. And there's and the next day moment coming up here. I want to talk about that with Wes Uhler and what we're hearing there on the wire. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Wes Uhler. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. The NFL season is well underway, and you can take advantage of a big offer from FanDuel. Because if you're a new customer for FanDuel and you win your first $5 bet on the FanDuel app, you can get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, players, props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get your chance at $300 in bonus bets only at FanDuel. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here with Wes Uhler of Steelers Nation Radio. Wes, let's talk about the rumor mill because it continues to churn until the trade deadline, which I believe is coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks here.
Yep.
I believe it's like early November. It's like it's like a few days after Halloween.
Correct.
But looking at it there, Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show and said, quote, there will be trades made this week because there were made trades last week. You've seen it. He said you got the Chargers looking for a running back, the Steelers looking for a receiver, and the Eagles looking for help. Browns being buyers and sellers. So obviously bringing that back into focus for the Steelers looking for a wide receiver, which they have been doing in perpetuity. It's just thing. It never stops. That's why I have the Mr. Krabs meme of and the next day because it does not stop. However, I want to urge my stance, and I want to get Wes your thoughts here on this stance, is that the Steelers fans that want to swing for the fences and go get the A.J. Brown types, I just don't see that happening. Such a player could completely restructure how this entire team is built and what they're trying to do moving forward. And I don't think that's what they're going for. But they could be looking for that number 2 wide receiver, that real number 2 wide receiver, the guy that will come in and be fine being second fiddle with DK Metcalf. A.J. Brown isn't fine being first fiddle in the Eagles because they throw him the ball enough. So he's going to want to come to Pittsburgh and, you know, and struggle for targets with DK Metcalf. And I just want to get your thoughts on this, Wes. When people say the Steelers are players, is it that the Steelers are going to trade a really big piece for a wide receiver? Or are they going to just kind of trade like a late day 3 pick, some very minor asset on their part to acquire said player, kind of like how they did for Mike Williams last year? Because that's what I think they're setting up.
It's funny you say that. I would have gotten 10 seconds into this before I said the name, a Mike Williams type move coming again this year. I would love to be wrong. And maybe it's maybe it's somewhere between Mike Williams and AJ Brown. You know, there is a middle ground there, certainly. But I'm completely with you on that AJ Brown thing. I know he was teammates with DK Metcalf at Ole Miss, and I know he had played for Arthur Smith in Tennessee. Like I get all that. But it just, the money involved in his contract moving forward, the role that he seemingly wants does not feel like a fit at all. But I still think that there's some interesting names out here. Chris, the good thing about this, it's a very weird year in the NFL in the sense of it seems like nobody other than Tampa Bay and Indianapolis and maybe the Steelers want to climb up power rankings and continue to win games. Right. Everyone else, the Eagles are losing. The Bills are losing. The Chiefs have been up and down. The Chargers started out really hot, and now they're not. Even the Lions had, kind of some head-scratching losses in there as well, too. The Packers, who lit the world on fire to start the season, have had some bad losses. It's wide open at the top of the NFL. But there's a lot of teams at the bottom that are already out of this thing still 2 weeks away from Halloween. The Jets are out. The Dolphins are out. The Browns are out. The Raiders are out. The Bengals are out. There's a lot of bad teams. Titans, absolutely. The Saints are 1-5. There's a lot of teams. I think we could see a busier trade deadline than usual. And I know in the last 5-6 years or so, the NFL trade deadline has certainly gotten more lively than it was when you and I were growing up. But I think there's some real options on some bad teams that the Steelers could be interested in. It could be a name as big as a Chris Olave from the Saints. Right. It could be someone like Jakobi Meyers from the Raiders, who we've had conversation about before. Could it be someone like Calvin Ridley from the Tennessee Titans? I also know it feels like the Indianapolis Colts have like an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver, and they might be wanting to get rid of one of those guys. There's some names there what I would be interested in. But I could also see the Colts looking at it and being like, we're 5-1. We don't care. We're not selling. We'd rather have one wide receiver too many than end up trading one and then one gets injured and all of a sudden we feel like we're lighting the wallet in that department. But I think the good news is there are some interesting, some capable, some wide receivers that would foot that bill of like exactly what you said, coming in here knowing that they are not numero uno, that they are number 2 behind DK Metcalf. I think there's some guys that foot that bill on some of these really bad teams. And to me, there are a lot of those teams with wide receiver talent that are going to be looking to sell in the next couple weeks. Calvin Ridley, Chris Olave, Jakobi Meyers, they might be the names at the top of my list. I think you would have loved to have some conversations maybe about a Tyreek Hill type before he went down. Again, Jalen Waddle, that might be a little too rich for your blood at this point. But the good news is I think they have a lot of realistic options. While you and I are on the same page that I don't really count A.J. Brown type as one of those, I don't think it has to be a Mike Williams kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel either. I think there is a legit middle ground for the Steelers in the wide receiver department here over the next couple weeks before the trade deadline.
I'm going to name the names that Adam Schefter says are names that he's heard GMs talking about being on the move. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandin Cooks, all Saints receivers, by the way.
All Saints receivers, which makes sense. Yeah,
but that's a team that's bad. Obviously, should be sellers, will be sellers, and they're moving that way. Jakobi Meyers, like you brought up from the Raiders, Alan Lazard from the Jets as a number 2 option there. Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley of the Titans, and Lockett, a guy who knows DK Metcalf.
I forgot about Lockett too. Yeah, I mentioned Ridley, but I like Lockett too. Yeah.
And again, I think the key here too is that whoever the Steelers are getting here, I don't think that they want to have to be tied to this guy for too long. Because I truly see the Steelers saying like, hey, DK's our number one wide receiver. We're soon going to be investing in the offensive linemen we want to keep, the playmakers that we've been drafting of late, and eventually like those trenches. And if you're overpaying two wide receivers, not overpaying, but if you're investing heavily into two wide receivers at the same time that you're that you're doing that, you could put yourself in a tough spot where like, man, let's say that Broderick Jones, Trey Faltano, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, they're your future O-line, but now you got to let go two of them because you paid Chris Olave and DK Metcalf super receiver money. And that's where I think that what's going to happen at wide receiver is they're going to go for the Tyler Lockett type, and maybe not Tyler Lockett. He's 33. You know, he's certainly up there. I'm not sure that he's the guy at the one because it kind of resembles a Mike Williams or an Allen Robinson, if you will, and that's not what you really want. But a Rashid Shaheed, I think, could be along those lines. A Brandin Cooks, you know, those types of players, because then if you're not tied to this guy long term. I think what's going to happen this year is, one, I still think the Steelers are major players in this quarterback market
100%
in the NFL draft. But right after that, they're going to look for a wide receiver to pair with that quarterback. They're going to get a guy in the second or third round that I think that they see as a really good young and up and comer who can learn under DK Metcalf, be a guy there, and then give them the flexibility to say, hey, if it doesn't work out for Roman Wilson or we don't find a way to pay Calvin Austin to stick around for a couple of years, we'll have a rookie that's talented, young, and not pressure on to be the number one guy working with our young quarterback moving forward.
It makes a ton of sense. It really does. And I think that's kind of been the plan for the Steelers all along here. And you're absolutely right. You have so many young guys on that offense, particularly on that offensive line, that if they continue to develop like they have, you're going to want to keep those guys around. You also don't look now, but are going to have to pay Nick Herbig a nice chunk of change this offseason if you want to extend him and keep him around.
And
I think and Porter, and I think both of those guys have to be a priority. Absolutely. You know, who knows what happens with someone like Jalen Warren if you're going to want to pay him and keep him around. They are in a good spot with all the draft capital they have and where they're kind of at from a cap structure now, but they've got some big decisions to be made coming down the line. I think you're absolutely right. They also, though, Chris, have plenty of draft capital for this upcoming season. And yes, I don't think it's a secret that there's a really good chance they could use some of that draft capital to move up and go and get a quarterback. But I think, can also afford to part with, a fourth round pick, a fifth round pick, some type of swap maybe as well too. We'll give you our fourth and we get back a sixth, something like that. To go and get a wide receiver that is going to help you and not break the bank. I think that makes a lot of sense, because getting back to, some like where we just kind of started in the sense of this thing being wide open, it feels like the Steelers are in a good of a position right now as they have been in a long time to go on a run, especially if they take care of business Thursday night in Cincinnati and move to 5-1.
They moved to 5-1. They would be 4 games ahead of the Ravens. They'd be in a commander seat, and also they would break the culture, not the culture, the curse that they've been going through, where they cannot win a road divisional AFC North game on Thursday Night Football. And it's been the wackiest of things that can get in the way, like that Browns game last year, where before the storm it looked like things were adding up.
Dude, so crazy.
And Wes, I was in your country. I was out by the Greenbrier getting ready to cover some college hoops.
That's right.
And just seeing that on TV and just being like, that looks
nuts.
insane. I can't imagine being in that. So, but just things like that have gotten in the way, as well as preparation, and just also when you're playing divisional opponents on the road, it's always tough. But on short weeks, it's even harder. And I think that's something the Steelers are definitely going up against. But I want to talk
good news real quick. Just good news for you. Aaron Rodgers. I actually looked this up today. Aaron Rodgers, 9-1 in his career in divisional Thursday night games.
That's crazy. Well,
that's what he's going to bust the slump. He's going to
meet immovable object, baby. That's what you're looking to see there. But that's a tease into what I was going to talk about next, as far as culture, because there's something that Mike Tomlin said that I talked about with Alan Saunders in our Tuesday episode that I want to harken back to and talk about the culture differences within this division, and also what could play out moving forward. We'll talk about that next that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Wes Uhler, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time and just used a couple taps, and I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Wes Uhler. Wes, I mentioned the Tomlin comment. I wanted to cue it up for us to just quickly listen to here when I asked him about the trading of Joe Flacco and like just the sense that it gave off. This also set up a firestorm. Everybody was about this today. I did not know my little question was going to
there you go.
But there it goes. But listen to how Mike Tomlin talks about it. And I want to direct this in a way in this conversation that I think is what he actually was kind of referring to here, rather than what some people think he was digging at here. Here's Mike Tomlin.
Mike, you've coached in the AFC North longer than anybody. What did you make of the rarity of seeing an intra-divisional trade of an experienced quarterback inside the division?
You know, to be honest, it was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us, because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings.
So, Wes, Mike talking there, I sense a few things here that people that are a little under the surface. One, he says maybe Andrew Berry's smarter than me, whatever there. I think one, he's sticking up for Kevin Stefanski because he knows what it does to trade away a quarterback that they thought was their best quarterback, and what that does to them as their chances to win. There's loud noises about firing Kevin Stefanski every day, and there's that coaching fraternity. So I think he's talking about that. But the culture differences of the Browns selling off their future to do that. And I talked about this a little bit with Ross Tucker, former NFL lineman, who's well in with CBS Sports and Westwood One Sports. We talked about that on the North Shore Drive podcast. By the way, go check that out with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But with this, with the way that this is approached and the game is approached by the Browns, I hear that some may say, well, the Browns, they're just looking to the future. They knew that they're not going to be good this year. So they're trading away a guy and they're getting draft capital for it. But I'm sorry. If this was some genius move by the Browns, they would have had more success by now. They wouldn't be the Browns as the Browns. They wouldn't be the laughing stock of the NFL year in and year out. And B, don't try to sell me that a 6th round pick swapped for a 5th round pick,
a day 3 pick swap,
is something that you're really so happy that you got there. I think part of this is the acknowledgement that, Mike Tomlin's you don't sell your coach out like that. You don't sell your guys out like that. You don't commit to saying, hey, we suck this year. We're going to keep sucking, and you just got to take it up the chin, because that's the stuff that erodes culture, that chases people away, and it gets Myles Garrett saying, it must be nice to be on a team that does those types of things. And now your superstar don't want to play for you like he didn't before the season even started until you upped him to $40 million.
It's confusing times in Cleveland, as always, certainly. I think your Stefanski analysis is spot on. I think Mike Tomlin has a lot of respect for Kevin Stefanski and realizes that he is at an organization where it's very hard to succeed, as they just seemingly are blindfolded playing pin the tail on the donkey with all the moves that they make, whether it's the Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson stuff, whether it's the back and forth with Myles Garrett, whether it's trading your opening day starter to a team in your own division, a couple weeks into the season. I think that there's a lot there. I also think Mike Tomlin, there's just some, Chris, you could speak better to this to me because you're in all of those press conference rooms and have been for a while. Mm-hmm. I think in year 19 here, he's not timid about who he is anymore. And I think particularly in kind of the context of the AFC North, I think he has a ton of respect for John Harbaugh and the Ravens. I think he has a lot of respect for Kevin Stefanski, but not so much the Browns organization. And that felt like something that he kind of had in the hopper and was waiting to unleash. Like you said, I think to defend the coaching fraternity. And also as well, too, I'm sure he's a little ticked off about having to face Joe Flacco, a guy that just last season, about a year ago, came in at Lucas Oil Stadium there for the Colts in Indianapolis and had his way with the Steelers defense. I think there was a lot of maybe frustration there from Mike Tomlin in some ways, and just a little, all right, you know what? I'm going to have some pride. I'm going to have a little pushback here. And where in the past I wouldn't do something like this, I'm going to let it fly a little bit.
I do think it was part of that, and I do think like Mike. And it's funny is Jamar Chase was asked about this, in this Bengals side. He was like, I don't really care what Mike Tomlin says, but I think people misunderstood. Mike Tomlin wasn't digging a dig at the Bengals for doing it. He even said it's a smart move for them to do it.
Smart for them, yeah.
Joe knows what it's like to play in the NFL. He's a better quarterback.
And you got to keep Chase and T. Higgins and some of the guys on that team engaged, and at least have them think you're trying to win.
Exactly. So like the Bengals, but his point is as the Browns, you're bailing out your divisional opponent by giving them that asset. And again, if you sent Joe Flacco to the Seahawks or the Saints or someone else, just someone that's completely irrelevant,
Arizona Cardinals,
right? And I think that you are right that like part of it also, Mike's like, dang it, like we just avoided.
There's definitely some
Joe
of that.
Flacco.
Like I would rather play Jake Browning. Thanks a lot.
Right. And so that's certainly a factor there. But, like, I think part of it's like, we talked to Joey Porter Jr. earlier this week, and he noted that, like, hey, sure, Flacco got us a little bit last year, but that's because we game planned for Anthony Richardson. And in the first couple drives that Flacco got us, we realized, okay, we got to switch out of this. And eventually we did switch. We just didn't get it done in time to do enough to win. But this week they'll be preparing for Joe Flacco. They'll be ready for the things that he likes to do. And I think that's got to be another part of this. But again, it's the culture thing that I think is really important. And to your point about Aaron Rodgers that you teased at the end of the last segment, what I think could be very different about the culture. You talked about him being 9-1 in divisional games on Thursday Night Football. That's huge. But what's also huge about that is I think that the level of preparation that comes from the quarterback position, I don't think can be rivaled with what Aaron Rodgers does, even comparative to Ben Roethlisberger, because I always think there's a big difference between Aaron Rodgers and Ben Roethlisberger. I think both have had amazing arms, amazing athleticism, but what Aaron Rodgers has always had on Ben is that he's always been the more cerebral quarterback that sees the field, that's why he has 4 MVPs and Ben hasn't had an MVP vote. So I think that's part of what he brings, even at 41 years old. He can be the guy that says, hey, we're going to be ready for this, this, and this.
Maybe better than ever.
Exactly. And maybe the best that the Steelers have ever had. And maybe that's the key that, like, in this moment, they can be better in Thursday Night Football. And to your point, I truly think if the Steelers can get over the hump of this week, of the short week, they get the mini bye afterwards that you get normally after that. And then you have that run of really good games, really good teams you play. The Packers, the Chargers. There's one more. Colts. Like, a run of games there. You can go into that with confidence and say, like, hey, we've gotten over the hurdles of the early part of the season. Now let's play our style of football. It can start with wins like this that build momentum, because winning is huge in the part of terms of culture and development of young players and locker rooms.
Chris, I think you can draw a direct parallel between how good Aaron Rodgers is above the neck. Probably him and Tom Brady, the best ever pre-snap at the line of scrimmage. Maybe you put Peyton Manning in that conversation as well, too. And for Aaron Rodgers, especially at this age, he's doing that better than ever before. 2, why he's got such a good record, 13-6 overall, 9-1 in the division on Thursday Night Football games, because you have less time to prepare, to watch film, to game plan, all that stuff throughout the week. So what's a real X factor? Having a quarterback who could come to the line of scrimmage and confuse defenses, diagnose what they're doing quickly, get you. I think the thing that Aaron Rodgers has done best in 5 games so far for the Steelers is just avoiding negative, getting them out of bad situations. Even if it ends up being a throwaway, or even if it ends up being a 1 or 2 yard run, it's not a TFL, it's not a loss, it's not a disaster. There is a direct correlation between why he's been so good in short weeks with how accomplished and how great he has always been, but particularly now with all his experience above the shoulders, above the neck, with his game brain at the line of scrimmage. I think it's a perfect recipe for the Steelers to finally get that first road win on a Thursday night against a division foe under Mike Tomlin. And like we've said, be 5-1, feel great about yourself, have the extra long week to prepare for Green Bay, which would be a massive game. Steelers, Packers, Sunday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers, two of the biggest brands in American sports. And as you mentioned, a real stretch run of you've got the Chargers soon, you've got the Colts soon, you've got Buffalo Thanksgiving weekend a little over a month from now. It would be I think a very good time to feel like you're kind of clearing that final hurdle and having all the confidence in the world.
To your point about Aaron Rodgers and being smart with the football and getting you out of bad situations, he still has the lowest interception percentage of all time in the NFL. He's only been picked off in 1.4% of his passes, literally the lowest of any player of all time. And he's led the NFL in having the lowest interception rate 6 different times in his career.
Aaron Rodgers on Thursday nights in his career, 42 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. Is that good, Chris? That's pretty good.
Doggone good. That's pretty doggone good. Again, the unstoppable force. Does it meet the immovable object? And what happens there? We will see on Thursday Night Football, but don't think that we're done here getting you ready for that, because tomorrow we got crossover Thursday with the Locked On Bengals guys, Jake and James. We love talking with them, but we also love talking with our man, Wes Uhler of Steeler Nation Radio. Wes, thanks so much for joining us with your Ultimate Warrior shirt here. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Little change in my professional life since I was last here on Locked On with you, Chris. I am now no longer on Steelers Nation Radio with Arthur Moats at noon. I've been moved to the Drive Time show with a very popular man around these parts. I know the Locked On community. I know your audience loves Matt Williamson, as do I. And I am his new co-host on the Drive. Very humbled and honored to step in for our brother Dale Lawley there on that show with Matt Williamson. So that's where you can find me every day is 4 p.m. with Matt on Steelers Nation Radio. Also just SNR Drive, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now as well, too. And then as Chris is always kind enough to let me plug for all my fellow tortured Mountaineer souls, I do the In the Gun podcast, which is my WVU show, WVU podcast as well.
Absolutely. He's Wes Uhler. We love him here. Thanks, Wes, for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Check all of his work out there, just like you can check out my work. I'm Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all social media accounts at Carter Critiques is always my handle. Find me there to get all my work. You can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, including my upcoming film study, which should be out sometime Wednesday morning, where I talk about the pass rush and what Teryl Austin is doing to help it find its way, as they are now, again, one of the better blitzing teams in the NFL. And as always, you can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, on your favorite podcasting apps, and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here for Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network.